We'll start by looking at the history that shaped very recent Islamic work that has reached the corners of the globe. In the year 1908 in the Ottoman Empire, it was ruled by Abdul Hamid II. He was the Sultan, one of the last couple of sultans of the Ottoman Empire. The empire was going through massive decline. Within the last 50 years, it had lost maybe a third of its political influence and control. The notion of Islamic civilization had all but dwindled. And Islam had very little to do in terms of regulating and inspiring the institutions of education, of governance, of military, and the rest of the society. And this proved massively problematic for the nation of believers who were under this Ottoman Empire's control. In a rapidly changing world where there was the Industrial Revolution coming from Europe, the Enlightenment coming from Europe, and the advancements from Europe are moving very fast, the Muslim world is not doing much of anything. So in that environment, there was a 23-year-old young Kurdish man who was an intellectual, who was someone who was deeply attached to Islam. And as a young man, he served as a member of the High Council of Islamic Affairs in Istanbul, which was the capital of the Islamic Empire. So this young 23-year-old man named Saeed Nursi, he came to Sultan Abdul Hamid II and he presented a proposal that he thought was crucial for the future of the Ottomans. He said, we need to develop a model school that will integrate between the religious sciences and the modern secular sciences and create a society that sees the world through Islam and is able to join modernity with an Islamic identity. Sultan Abdul Hamid rejected this proposal. And so Saeed Nursi, Allah yarhamu, one of the great scholars of our time, he continued his teaching, he continued his movement, and he was a very vocal critic of British influence in Turkey. He opposed the growing secular nationalist movement that led to a revolution, which then led to the Turks announcing to the Muslim world that there's no more an Islamic empire or state. We are now the Turkish secular state. And so what is now called Turkey, that was established in 1923. So this new secular state, its champion, its British student, Kemal Ataturk, he tried to keep Saeed Nursi close. Even though he's a young man, he has shown to be very influential and very convincing in his Islamic ways. So he offered Saeed Nursi the Minister of Religious Affairs post. And of course, Sheikh Saeed, he rejected this post. He insisted that Islam should be the source to regulate modernity. The modern world should be regulated by Islam, not the Europeans who had become a godless people. So over time, Saeed Nursi's growing popularity and his teachings had spread all over this secular state of Turkey, to where intellectuals in the colleges, even military personnel and government figures are now kind of rethinking their identity. So they arrested Saeed Nursi as violating the laws of the state that mandate secularism. And so they sent him far across Turkey in an exiled prison. So then he began to write, which became the future fruition. So he was writing what he called Risala Nur, which is the epistles of light, the treatises of light. And so in that, it's a masterpiece beautifully explaining Islamic creed, Islamic law, Islamic character through the lens of the order of the natural creation, through the lens of how the world is operating. Islam is the governing force of everything. So he focused on the ayat in the Quran and talking about how that is the regulating recognition of divine authority. So there are ayat in creation and there is ayat in revelation, moving the believers to regulate creation and to understand how we fit. So he emphasized that science and religion are natural partners and they should never be separated. During the time of Saeed Nursi, his students, as well as the contemporary scholars from Syria and Palestine and Iraq and Turkey, they started to refer to him as Badi'uz Zaman, the unique wonder of our age, because of his writings and his speeches were just so profoundly bringing the Quranic message to everybody's ideas. And so in the year 2008, they actually did an international survey, and they found that there are between 6 and 9 million followers of the Nur movement. Most of those followers are known as the Hizmet movement, the service to God movement. So the question comes, where does this Hizmet thing comes from? So in 1938, a newly found secular Turkey, there was a young man named Muhammad Fethullah Gulen who was born in Anatolia. He comes from a rare family that has maintained all throughout its branches a religious identity. And his father Ramiz was an imam of a mosque. And you could say by looking at the things he learned from his father that probably he was influenced by Saeed Nursi, but it wasn't a popular thing that you want to be known for in Turkey back then. When he was raised in the Sufi orders, learning character and the spiritual regimen of the remembrance of God. And in 4th grade in a private school, he became first directly influenced to the writings of Saeed Nursi. So as Gulen gets older in the 1960s, he takes a formal route to study the Islamic sciences. And he studies with prominent scholars the different Islamic sciences. As he became 30 years old, his mom jumped in and said, look, Fethullah, you need to tie the knot. Looks like in Turkey they have adopted this phrase. He said, my beloved mother, I have tied the knot to Hizmet, to the service of Islam. So that's where this idea started when he was just a young imam. He said, my life is dedicated. So like Imam Ibn Taymiyyah and Imam al-Nawawi, Sheikh Fethullah Gulen never got married. He wrote books, he wrote articles, and he inspired and mentored thousands of people. So around that time, he began to read about other revivalist movements. And he reflects that he very much respected the Muslim Brotherhood movement of Egypt, and he respected the Islamic movement of Maududi in Pakistan. And he said all of their general teachings and their revivalist methodology is in line with what I believe and what I feel that I have learned from Saeed Nursi. His only historic objection was that it seems there's too much goal of a political empowerment rather than just focusing on the civilizational growth. And he felt that having a goal of political empowerment may create problems in the intentions of the people who are involved. And so the young Imam Gulen was very impressed by Badi'u Zaman's works, The Wonder of the Age, and he then began teaching people, expounding upon those things. And in his sermons, he would read articles of what's going on in Turkey, and then he would take references from the Light episodes, and he would talk about things in a relevant way. And he used to actually put out on a Monday, he would put a sign out in front of the mosque, this is what we're going to be talking about in the Khutbah Jum'ah. So he had this phrase that Imam Gulen said that the head and the heart should always be in agreement. That spirituality should govern what you're dealing with in your daily interaction. It should be managing what is going on in the real world. In 1983, this secular state realized that it's clamping down on waqf, on endowments, has created problems for their institutionality in the society. They need the public sector to start to, and the private sector to work together in foundations and social support. So they opened the door for people to start their own foundations. So of course the Hizmet community started to establish many different foundations and institutions for charitable work, but mostly for schools, but also for media and the means of supporting media as a publicly supported trust, not as a private profit endeavor. In 1997, the young mayor of Istanbul, this young, dynamic Recep Erdogan, is posing with a picture with his elder friend and ally, Imam Gulen, at the Asia Bank, talking about how they are establishing Islam in Turkey, and the welfare party of the Muslim community is starting to gain a momentum in there's a guy named Erdogan, who was the leader of that, who was the mentor of Erdogan. So at that time, they were kind of on the same page about needing to bring Islam to their country. And we saw the crackdown, a coup happened. where the seculars came down on the welfare party and other parties, and they started treating them like they're trying to Islamicize and create a new country within a country. And so then Erdogan was charged with Islamism, and that he was reciting extremist poetry. And Erdogan was put in jail for 4 months. Imam Gulen had been previously, 20 years ago, under the secular regime, put in jail for 7 months for Islamism. And so Gulen said, you know what, I feel like there's something happening here, and he flew to America. And within months, his intuition was correct. The secular regime of Turkey brought charges of corruption and conspiracy against the state, against Gulen in absentia. So by the year 2015, the Hizmet movement has millions of followers in dozens of countries with hundreds of schools, mentorship networks, charitable foundations, banks, and dialogue institutes. Their collective assets are well into the many billions at that point. While the people revere him greatly as a leader and as an inspirational motivator and teacher, their allegiance is to Islam and the work of Islam, which is why when he passed away a couple of days ago, may Allah have mercy on him and envelop him in his grace, he did not say, okay, here's the leader of my movement. He just left people with writings and speeches and things, and he expects them to do what he did, to find out about how we can carry on as the Prophet ﷺ left, and so to see what they think is the right way to take this movement on. And so that is the beautiful tradition of Islam, is that people pick up from our scholars and they try to do everything they can to utilize the tools necessary and to bring people together on a mission to promote Islam in the world.